Raider Nation, before we get into today's show, I just want to let y'all know that the video you're about to see was recorded before Michael Gallup decided to retire. Though I am telling y'all that him retiring has nothing to do with this video. We're going to be breaking down some surprise cut candidates from an ESPN article. But when you see the 53-man roster projection that ESPN puts out, you'll see Gallup in that list. So I just want to be able to give you guys a friendly reminder that this video was filmed before Gallup retired, but it doesn't impact the video at all. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up on today's show, I'm going to be talking about the 5 surprise cut candidates that I saw from ESPN's 53-man roster projection. Now, I put out a lot of roster projection videos, and we're going to roll through here quickly the 53 players that ESPN has projected end up making this roster for Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco, right before we get started here with a little training camp action. So the way that this is going to go is I'm just going to go 10 players at a time. Not too many big surprises here from the quarterback, running back. You can see some of the wide receivers being sprinkled in, 3 QBs, 4 running backs. The Raiders end up keeping 6 wide receivers, and not too many differences for me either. I also had the silver and black keeping Michael Gallup, DJ Turner, Jalen Guyton. At tight end, there are only keeping 3, which makes it, makes me wonder a little bit how they're going to be able to handle that 12 personnel. And then from the offensive line standpoint, they decided to keep 10. Now, some of my previous 53-man roster projections, I've kept 9. The fact that they're going to keep 10 does make me a little bit concerned, maybe even the right word could be worried about Colton Miller's health. They ended up keeping Jordan Meredith on this team where I didn't have him making my last 53-man. But then on the defensive line, they keep 4 defensive ends, which kind of seems like the right mix in there, though there is a little bit of a drop-off after Tyree Wilson. Janarius Robinson still makes me nervous. At defensive tackle, they keep 5 DTs. Byron Young, Matthew Butler, both of these young players that were part of the McDaniels and Ziegler regime, they end up making the roster according to ESPN. At linebacker, it's these 5 LBs, which is kind of the pounds that we believe end up making it. I think if you were to ask most Raider fans. At corner, still no real surprises in there. At safety, they keep 4, which means Chris Smith was unable to end up making this 53-man. And then to round out the whole thing with just special teams, I do think that the Raiders have one of the best special teams units in all of football, with Daniel Carlson, with A.J. Cole, with Jacob Moyer. If you were wondering what those numbers were, I probably should have said it off the jump. That's just me helping you count through the 53 players. You also got to remember that the Raiders will be able to keep David Agoa just because of the International Pathway Program. If you want to see my 53-man roster projection that I put out last week, and I like to do this throughout the entire season, right? All 360 days, 65 days. I'll do it after the draft. I'll do it training camp. I'll do it obviously right before cuts. We just continue to do it free agency. I like to be able to break this down. That way it helps me understand where some of the strengths are, where some of the depth is on this team. But I'll say the ESPN one, we're pretty close. I would say I had only 4 different players. So 49 out of the 53, I believe, are the exact same as what they put on ESPN. If you want to go check that video out, though, hopefully you already did. Hopefully you're subscribed. And if you're a real one, I want you to spam RO4L down below, because to me, we have a saying here at Chat Sports. I got a saying here for Raider Nation. The real ones are people that watch videos in May, June, and July. Real ones are people that bleed silver and black. Real ones are people that believe Raider Nation is that second family to all of you. And if that all resonates, subscribe, because I'm trying to grow the family here at the Raiders Report, and we need more real ones. So coming up here, let's get these 5 surprise cut candidates, and I got them ranked from 5 all the way down to 1. So the 5 players that I was the most shocked didn't make the roster according to ESPN. I'll break all of those down here in just a moment, but I got to give a shout out to our awesome sponsor, GameTime. Last minute tickets. I love the flash deals. You can see views from your seats, and you're going to get that lowest price guaranteed. The best confident thing I could possibly say of why you should use GameTime, I trusted GameTime to get my fiance's dad tickets for his birthday. Bottom line, if I'm putting that much trust in something, then I think a lot of y'all can understand how awesome GameTime truly is. So Chuggs and I, we love using GameTime, and most recently I was able to snag tickets to the Home Run Derby. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer that it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And with the Raiders preseason and regular season right around the corner, GameTime is the perfect app for Raider Nation, and I love the last-minute ticket deals. I also love the fact that if you're in Las Vegas, you can look at events that are nearby for the Raiders. You can look at all the events. Like, I know that not everybody lives in Las Vegas, so what I did recently is I looked at all the events. Like, if you need to be able to take somebody to a Raiders-Vikings preseason game on August 10th, you can get a ticket for $12. Like, that's there. But make sure you do the all-in prices, because what I don't like, and Jeremy makes this analogy all the time, which I think is a smart one. You know, imagine if you went to go buy milk at a grocery store, and you saw the milk and it was $3, and then you go to the cash out and register, and they're like, that's $6. When you do all-in pricing, they tell you literally what the price of that milk, what the price of that ticket is from the jump, so that way when you go to checkout, your ticket's not randomly doubled. I love GameTime, lowest price guaranteed. Check them out. Links down in the comments and in the description of today's show. All right, here we go. Top 5 players that I was the most surprised that ESPN ended up cutting. Now, Darian Butler ends up making this list here, and I'll be honest, I was really only surprised by 4 names. Butler, though, I'm going to throw on this list because if somebody were to ask me, Mitch, who do you think is a surprise player that could end up making that 53-man roster? I'm going to say Butler because of his connections with Antonio Pierce, his connections with Marvin Lewis, and I've heard from multiple people inside of that Raiders room that have told me that don't be surprised if Tom McMahon asks for an extra linebacker on this roster to solely use for special teams. Because with the new kick return rules, if the new kick return rules are, happening the way that they are, there's a lot of unknowns. And sometimes teams, they just make sure that they have some extra security, an extra security blanket for those unknowns. So you could look at Butler as being just a special teams player, because you've heard a lot of coaches already this offseason say, think of kick returning as more of like running with the football, the running game. That's where you might see some extra linebackers. He's had some injury concerns, and I do think that the Raiders would be better off just keeping 5 LBs. Another name to keep in mind as being a surprise guy if the Raiders do want to keep that extra linebacker just in case, I'll say it's Kanai Malga. Kanai Malga continues to find a way to make this Raiders team make the roster, whether it be practice squad or not. Now let's get into where I'm actually surprised, because these next 4 players are all people that I think a lot of people are going to anticipate. Well, I believe Carter Bradley is going to end up making the team over Anthony Brown just because of the offense that he's able to execute. To me, he's a lot closer to the type of QBs Gardner Minshew, Aidan O'Connell are compared to Brown. Now, again, you only gave him a $25,000 signing bonus. $125,000 of that was guaranteed. Put up some decent numbers from his college career, but to me, the reason why I think that he might also get that extra nod is because his dad is former Raiders defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley. Sure, it was for only one season. However, I do think, though, one of the things that we got to be able to consider is this coaching staff really, truly wants to have players that have some of that player background, right? Like, think about how big of a story it's been with Isaiah Polameo being related to Troy Polamalu. What about somebody like Trey Taylor with his relationship with Ed Reed? Antonio Pierce, player coach, and I do think you've already seen him bringing in so many of these player coaches. And for Carter Bradley, there's been reports this offseason that he's got it between the ears a lot further than what a lot of other rookies do have it. So maybe it could be somebody that ends up making the squad. Let's go to number 3 here on the list. It's Zach Gentry at tight end. And Gentry is a massive human being at 6'8". He's one of the tallest players that we have at tight end. And the reason why that I am a little bit surprised that he didn't end up making the squad is because if the Raiders want to run with 12 personnel, and if, God forbid, if anything happens to Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, or Harrison Bryant, and to me, the Raiders have one of the best tight end rooms in the league, but if something were to happen to one of those guys, like what exactly is plan B? Because if 12 personnel is going to be used as much as we're hoping that it's going to be used, and when you think about just trying to confuse a defense, like to me, a confusing defense would be if you put Brock Bowers out there on the field as a receiver, Michael Mayer, maybe of Harrison Bryant, you can still run 12 personnel like that. So to not have a backup tight end, somebody that Antonio Pierce has, kept around on this team, like when AP took over as head coach, Gentry was on this team. So he's going to be a big red zone option. Yeah, if you cut him, you save $1.13 million, which is the most out of any guy that you're going to see on this list. And it's just simply because if 12 personnel is going to be as important as what Luke Getsy has said is going to be as important as what AP is going to be as important as what the expectation here is for the nation. Keeping only 3 tight ends makes me a little bit nervous. So instead, I'd rather keep a Zach Gentry, and then I'd rather move on from a Jordan Meredith or a player of that caliber. Before we continue to get in here to the most surprising cut candidates on ESPN's list, what we're going to be doing is breaking down. We'll get into all that. I just got some news here, which I'll talk about to everyone that's watching this live show. We're going to be talking about this all off season. I hope you join Jeremy and I for our Week 1 watch party. You can get your free watch party tickets at chatsports.com/week1 is how you're going to be able to do it. You can party with Jeremy Chuggs and I. It's free to attend. There's going to be tons of giveaways. There's going to be tons of food, tons of drinks. It's going to be a good time. If you enjoy what Jeremy and I do, and hopefully you guys enjoy what we do here, I'd love to be able to hang out with y'all in person. And then the night before the Raiders play the Chargers, we're also going to be in North Carolina. Again, for both of these events, there's going to be a Week 1 tee-off event. So if you want to play a little golf with Jeremy and I at Top Golf in Durham, North Carolina, go to chatsports.com/topgolf. Get your raffle tickets. There's going to be 20 people that are going to be in this with Jeremy and I. So you got a lot of chances to win. So good luck to everybody out there. A lot of food, a lot of giveaways. It's going to be a fun time. Hang out with Chuggs and I Saturday and Sunday, September 7th, September 8th, both at those 2 links that you just saw down there below. Let's go to number 2 here. It's Nesta, Jade, Silvera. And Nesta Jade is somebody that ended up making my 53-man roster, and I just had him making it over a player like Matthew Butler, who, you know, Matthew Butler has battled some injuries this offseason. Nesta Jade's got the relationship with Antonio Pierce. He's got the relationship with Marvin Lewis. He did play at one point with Arizona State. Yes, he obviously was with the U as well. But to me, he just is more of an anchor. And when I look at the Raiders' defensive line, we need more like anchors. We need more nose tackles. We need bigger defensive tackles in general, because what I don't want to see happen is after Christian Wilkins, after John Jenkins, our DTs are a little bit on the smaller side. Byron Young's not that big of a defensive tackle. Now, we have Marquand McCall. I don't see him making that 53-man. So for me, I would keep Nesta Jade Silvera over Matthew Butler. So because I'm saying all that is why I do really think that it was surprising. If you cut him, it does save $915K. But again, nobody's really going to be looking at that money in terms of why you should cut a player, why you shouldn't cut him. I just did it up here for a little bit more context. But Nesta Jade is the second player that I was the most surprised by that didn't make this 53-man, which means coming in here at number 1, and I know this has been a player that most recently I didn't have in my own 53-man roster, but I genuinely think when I did this show was based off of who do I think Raider Nation would be the most surprised did not make a 53-man roster, and I'm going to go with Chris Smith, the safety out of Georgia. This was a 5th-round pick, somebody that McDaniels and Ziegler had some good hope on. He's a talented player. He's a good leader, and I mean, he was one of the captains, one of the leaders of that Georgia Bulldog defense when they won the national title. The problem here for Smith is the Raiders love Isaiah Paulomeo. They drafted Trey Taylor, and they already got some high expectations for him. And when you look at the snaps that Smith played, all 22 defensive snaps came in the Chargers blowout, plus his special teams usage just continuously decreased with Antonio Pierce. So, like, I look at the Raiders' defense last season, and, yeah, you had a 9-game sample size with AP and PG, but, like, if you were already being kind of weeded out and the Raiders found another safety who won the Jim Thorpe Award, I get it, he was a 7th-round pick, but I think the only reason why he's a 7th-round pick is because he went to Air Force, and people just look sometimes way too often at the college you went to instead of looking at the player. And Trey Taylor, to me, is not somebody that should have went in the 7th round, but he's a good player. And the Raiders have a lot of solid depth, and they have a solid team at safety where this might be one of the most jam-packed, talented units that we have. Marcus Epps, Trevon Merrick are 2 phenomenal safeties. I think it's one of the best duos at the safety position in all the league. Isaiah Paulomeo is a sleeper player, safety, linebacker, hybrid. Trey Taylor is going to be a fun player to go out there and watch. So to me, my question to you all is, because when you watch this video, there's 2 names that I think are going to stick out more than anybody. Chris Smith, Nesta Jade Silvera. If we're sitting here on it's August 27th, right, 4 p.m. Eastern time, Raiders got to make sure that they go from 91. You got to get down to 53 by then. If both of these players don't make the team, which one would be the more surprising cut to you? If you think it's Chris Smith, I want you to type CS. If you think it's Nesta Jade Silvera, I want you to type NJS down below. To me, I expect Nesta Jade to make it over Chris Smith, and I do think most Raider fans are going to say Smith, but to me, I have a lot of confidence in Trey Taylor. I have a lot of confidence in Isaiah Palomeo. I have more confidence in Marcus Epps, Trevon Merrick than I do for some of these other defensive tackles, where, to me, Nesta Jade is a better player than Matthew Butler. So one more time here, if you haven't already, make sure you take a screenshot of this. If you want to post it on social media, believe it or not, it does help Jeremy Chuggs and I both out quite a bit. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're watching all of our live shows, because even though I'm getting ready to go to my bachelor party, which this is my last live show of the week for those of you watching on Tuesday, I will be back briefly on Friday at my bachelor party with Chuggs. He's going to be going live for Raiders Friday Happy Hour. And if any breaking news happens, if the Raiders sign anybody, if anything crazy happens, Chuggs has got you covered. Make sure you show him some love, because he's going to be putting in that extra time and work while I'm gone.